I never believed in destiny until a stranger's face began haunting my dreams. My name is Camila Everett, and I'm a neuroscience technician who thought she understood the mechanics of sleep. I was wrong about almost everything. It started as curiosity. Working in a sleep lab, I'd watched thousands of people drift through REM cycles, their brains lighting up like Christmas trees on our monitors. The idea of conscious dreaming fascinated me from a scientific perspective. What would it feel like to be awake inside unconsciousness? I began with simple techniques. Reality checks during the day, asking myself if I was dreaming every time I looked at my hands. Dream journals by my bedside, pages filled with fragments of midnight narratives. Meditation before sleep, counting breaths until my mind softened at the edges. The first successful lucid dream happened on a Tuesday in March. I was walking through my childhood home, but the walls were painted colors that had never existed there. When I realized I was dreaming, the sensation was electric. Pure awareness flooding through an impossible space. I changed the wall colors with a thought. Made myself fly through the ceiling. Conjured a piano that played itself. For 20 minutes of dream time, I was a god in my own unconscious universe. When I woke up, I felt like I'd discovered a secret door in reality. For weeks, I practiced nightly. The lucid dreams became more vivid, more controllable. I could sculpt landscapes, summon people from my past, even recreate memories with perfect clarity. It was addictive in the way that total freedom always is. Dangerous, though I didn't know it yet. The first time I saw his face, I was dreaming of a library with infinite shelves. Books that rewrote themselves as I watched, stories that changed based on my attention. I was reaching for a volume about quantum mechanics when I felt someone watching me. He was standing between the stacks, maybe 30 feet away. Tall, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to carry weight beyond their years. He wore a simple white shirt and dark pants, clothes that belonged to no particular era. When our eyes met, I felt something shift in my chest. Recognition without memory. I tried to approach him, but he stepped backward, maintaining the distance between us. His expression was neither hostile nor welcoming. Just intensely present, like he was trying to communicate something through silence alone. I woke up with his face burned into my memory. The sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the profound sadness in his eyes. I'd never seen him before, but something about him felt familiar. Disturbingly familiar. I told myself it was just a random dream figure, a composite of faces I'd seen in passing. Our brains are constantly processing visual information, creating new combinations from stored memories. There was probably a logical explanation for why this particular face felt so significant. But he appeared again the next night. This time in a dream about my college campus, standing across the quad while I sat on a bench. He was wearing the same clothes, carrying the same expression of quiet intensity. When I stood up to approach him, he turned and walked away, disappearing into a crowd that hadn't been there moments before. The third night, he was in my apartment. Not the apartment I live in now, but the one from my dreams, where the walls are always slightly different colors and the furniture rearranges itself when I'm not looking. He was sitting in my kitchen, hands folded on the table, waiting. I sat across from him, close enough to see the details of his face. A small scar above his left eyebrow. Eyes that were brown but flecked with gold in the dream light. Lips that looked like they were holding back words. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer. Just looked at me with an expression that seemed to carry decades of unspoken conversation. I reached across the table to touch his hand, and he pulled away. Not violently, but with the quick reflexes of someone who'd been burned before. I woke up feeling like I'd been holding my breath for hours. My heart was pounding, my sheets soaked with sweat. The dream had felt more real than most of my waking moments. more emotionally charged than any interaction I'd had with an actual person in months. I started researching recurring dream figures. Most of the literature focused on archetypal symbols or unresolved psychological conflicts. Carl Jung wrote about the animus, the masculine aspect of the female psyche that appears in dreams. Freud had his own theories about repressed desires and wish fulfillment. But none of that explained the specificity of his face, the consistency of his appearance, or the overwhelming sense of recognition that I felt every time I saw him. This wasn't a symbol or an archetype. This was a person, even if he only existed in my dreams. The dreams began happening every night. Different locations, different scenarios, but always the same man with the same expression of patient waiting. Sometimes he would gesture for me to follow him, leading me through impossible architecture that my conscious mind couldn't have designed. Other times he would simply stand and watch, like he was memorizing my face. I started looking forward to sleep in a way that felt unhealthy. My waking hours became something to endure until I could return to the dream world and see him again. I found myself thinking about him during work, wondering what he was trying to tell me, why he felt so familiar. 3 weeks into the recurring dreams, I decided to research him more directly. I started sketching his face from memory, trying to capture the details that seemed most significant. The scar above his eyebrow. The way his eyes seemed to hold both sorrow and hope. The particular curve of his mouth when he almost smiled. I posted the sketches on social media, asking if anyone recognized the face. I submitted them to websites that helped people identify strangers from photographs. I even considered hiring a private investigator, though I wasn't sure how to explain that I was looking for someone who might only exist in my dreams. The search yielded nothing. No matches, no recognition, no leads. It was like he was a person who had never existed outside of my unconscious mind. But that didn't make the dreams feel any less real or emotionally significant. A month in, the dreams began to change. Instead of just watching or waiting, he started showing me things. Memories that didn't belong to me, scenes from what looked like another time period. A woman in a white dress standing by a window, looking out at a garden. The same woman arguing with a man in a kitchen, their voices raised but their words unclear. In these memory dreams, I wasn't myself. I was watching from outside, like a movie playing in my sleeping mind. But I could feel emotions that weren't mine. Anger, betrayal, a deep sense of having been wronged. The woman in the white dress was furious about something, and the man she was arguing with looked exactly like the face from my dreams. I started keeping more detailed dream journals, documenting every scene, every emotion, every detail I could remember. Patterns began to emerge. The woman and the man had been in some kind of relationship that ended badly. There were suggestions of promises broken, trust betrayed, consequences that rippled beyond their immediate situation. The dreams were becoming more vivid and emotionally intense. I would wake up feeling drained, like I'd been living through someone else's trauma. My work performance started to suffer. I was exhausted during the day, distracted by memories that weren't mine. My supervisor noticed the change in my behavior. Dr. Sarah Chin, a woman I'd worked with for 3 years, pulled me aside after I'd made my third data entry error in a week. She was concerned about my health, my focus, my general well-being. "Camila, you look like you haven't slept in weeks," she said. "Is everything okay at home?" I couldn't explain that I was sleeping too much, dreaming too intensely, living a parallel life in my unconscious mind. Instead, I told her I was dealing with some personal issues and would try to get more rest. But rest was impossible. The dreams were becoming more frequent, more emotionally demanding. Sometimes I would have the same dream 3 times in one night, each iteration adding new details, new layers of meaning. I was becoming obsessed with understanding what this man was trying to tell me. 6 weeks into the recurring dreams, I decided to seek professional help. Not because I thought I was going crazy, but because I needed someone with expertise in dream analysis to help me understand what was happening. I found Dr. Eliza Moran through a referral from one of my colleagues. Dr. Moran was a retired psychiatrist who specialized in dream research and consciousness studies. Her office was filled with books about sleep, dreams, and the unconscious mind. She listened to my story without judgment, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. Recurring dream figures are more common than you might think, she said. But the level of detail and emotional intensity you're describing is unusual. Have you considered that this might be more than just a psychological phenomenon? I asked what she meant, and she explained that many cultures believe dreams can be portals to past lives, connections to souls we've encountered in previous incarnations. The idea seemed absurd from a scientific perspective, but I was running out of rational explanations. Tell me about the emotions you feel in these dreams, Dr. Moran said. Not just what you observe, but what you experience personally. I described the guilt, the sense of having done something wrong, the feeling that I owed this man something I couldn't name. The way he looked at me with such sadness, like he was disappointed but still hoping for resolution. And the woman in the white dress? She asked. Do you feel connected to her? I admitted that I did, though I couldn't explain why. When I watched her in the memory dreams, I felt like I was seeing myself from the outside. Her anger felt like my anger, her betrayal like my betrayal. It was unsettling and emotionally exhausting. Dr. Moran suggested that I try a different approach to the dreams. Instead of just observing or trying to interact with the man, I should try to communicate with him directly. Ask him what he wanted, what he needed from me, how I could help him find peace. If this is indeed a connection to a past life, she said, then resolution might require acknowledgement of what happened and forgiveness for whatever went wrong. The idea made me uncomfortable. I'd never believed in past lives or karmic connections. But I was desperate for answers, and traditional psychology wasn't providing them. I agreed to try her approach. That night, I entered the dream world with a specific intention. I was going to find the man with the familiar face and ask him directly what he wanted from me. I was going to stop being passive and start being proactive about understanding these dreams. I found him in a garden that felt like a memory of paradise. Flowers that bloomed in impossible colors, trees that grew in geometric patterns, pathways that led to destinations that changed as you walked. He was sitting on a bench beneath a willow tree, looking at something in his hands. I approached him more directly than I ever had before. Sat beside him on the bench, close enough to see what he was holding. It was a photograph, old and faded, of a woman who looked exactly like me. Not similar. Identical. Is that me? I asked. He looked up, and for the first time in all these dreams, he spoke. His voice was deep, resonant, carrying an accent I couldn't identify. You look the same, he said. But you're not the same person. What do you mean? She promised to wait for me, he said, holding up the photograph. She promised to marry me when I came back from the war. But when I returned, she was already married to someone else. Someone with more money, more status, more to offer. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I could see it happening, feel it from the woman's perspective. The waiting, the uncertainty, the practical decision to marry someone else. The look on his face when he returned to find her gone. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. The guilt was overwhelming, even though I knew logically that I hadn't done anything wrong. I'm so sorry. I waited for you, he said. Even after I found out about the marriage, I waited. I never married anyone else. I never loved anyone else. I died waiting for you to keep your promise. The garden around us began to fade, colors bleeding out of the flowers, leaves falling from the trees. I could feel the dream ending, reality pulling me back to consciousness. But I fought to stay asleep, to finish this conversation. What can I do? I asked. How can I make this right? Forgive yourself, he said. And forgive me for holding on so long. I woke up with tears on my cheeks and a profound sense of emotional release. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe fully. The weight I'd been carrying, the guilt and confusion and obsession, had lifted. I didn't dream of him that night. Or the next night. Or the night after that. The recurring dreams had stopped as suddenly as they'd begun, leaving me with normal dreams about work and daily life. The intense emotional connection I'd felt to the man with the familiar face had simply vanished. But something had changed in my waking life. I felt more compassionate toward myself, more willing to forgive my own mistakes and imperfections. I also felt a strange sense of completion, like I'd resolved something important that I hadn't even known needed resolving. I went back to Dr. Moran to tell her what had happened. She listened with interest and satisfaction, like a scientist whose hypothesis had been confirmed. She explained that many people carry emotional residue from past lives, unresolved conflicts that can manifest in dreams or psychological patterns. The fact that the dream stopped after you acknowledged the situation and offered forgiveness suggests that this was indeed a karmic connection, she said. You've both been released from the pattern that was keeping you bound to each other. I still wasn't sure if I believed in past lives or karmic connections. But I couldn't deny that something profound had happened during those weeks of recurring dreams. Whether it was psychological, spiritual, or something else entirely, it had changed me in ways I was still processing. 3 months later, I was walking through downtown when I saw a familiar face across the street. Not the man from my dreams, but someone who looked remarkably similar. Same build, same dark hair, same intense eyes. For a moment, my heart stopped, thinking the dreams had somehow spilled into reality. But when he turned, I could see the differences. This was just a regular person going about his day, not a figure from my unconscious mind. Still, the resemblance was striking enough to make me wonder if some part of the dream experience had been preparing me for this moment. I never approached him or tried to make contact. Whatever had happened in the dreams felt complete, resolved, finished. But I found myself watching him occasionally, wondering if he ever had dreams about a woman who looked like me. The experience changed how I thought about dreams and consciousness. I became more interested in the research suggesting that dreams might be more than just random neural firing, that they might be a way for consciousness to process experiences that extend beyond a single lifetime. I also became more careful about lucid dreaming. The ability to control my dreams had led me into a situation I wasn't prepared for, an emotional intensity that had consumed weeks of my life. I still practiced occasionally, but with more respect for the power of the unconscious mind. 6 months after the dreams ended, I was getting ready for work when I noticed something in the mirror. A small scar above my left eyebrow, in exactly the same place where the man in my dreams had worn his scar. It was faint, barely visible, but definitely there. I had no memory of getting injured in that spot. No childhood accident, no adult mishap that would have left a mark. The scar looked old, like it had been there for years, but I was certain it was new. I'd looked in mirrors countless times and never noticed it before. I called Dr. Moran and told her about the scar. She was quiet for a long moment, then said that sometimes physical manifestations can appear after intense dream experiences. The boundary between the dream world and waking reality isn't as solid as we usually believe. Do you think it's connected to the dreams? I asked. I think the dreams were more real than you're comfortable admitting, she said. And sometimes reality leaves marks that extend beyond the experience itself. I touch the scar sometimes when I'm thinking about those weeks of recurring dreams. It's a small reminder that consciousness is more mysterious than neuroscience textbooks suggest. That love and guilt and forgiveness can transcend the boundaries of time and individual lives. I still work in the sleep lab, watching people drift through REM cycles, their brains lighting up with dream activity. But now I wonder what stories are playing out in their unconscious minds, what connections they're making to people and experiences that exist beyond their current lives. The man with the familiar face never returned to my dreams. But sometimes, in the space between waking and sleeping, I feel his presence. Not haunting or demanding, but peaceful. Like he's finally found the rest he was looking for. I hope he has. I hope we both have. My name is Camila Everett, and I learned that some faces find us across lifetimes, carrying messages that our conscious minds can't understand. I learned that forgiveness is more powerful than memory, and that love can persist even when the people who carried it are gone. I learned that dreams are not just random neural firing, but doorways to experiences that extend beyond the boundaries of a single life. And I learned that sometimes, the most profound healing happens in the space between sleeping and waking, where consciousness touches something larger than itself. The scar above my eyebrow is still there, a small reminder of a love that transcended time and death. A mark that connects me to someone I may never fully understand, but whose presence in my dreams taught me about the persistence of the human heart. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in silence. Sometimes the most profound healing requires nothing more than acknowledgement and forgiveness. And sometimes, the people we think we're meeting for the first time are actually old friends, carrying messages from lives we've forgotten but our souls remember. I touch the scar and remember the man with the familiar face, the dreams that changed my understanding of consciousness, and the moment when forgiveness set us both free. Some marks are meant to stay with us, reminders of connections that exist beyond the boundaries of time and individual memory. The dreams ended, but the healing continues. And in the quiet moments before sleep, I sometimes whisper a prayer of gratitude for the stranger who taught me that love is stronger than death, and that forgiveness is the most powerful force in any universe, waking or dreaming.